Hello, everybody. My name is Ashley, aka MiDNiTE. I am here with IKON and Kingdom Soldier. And oh my goodness, gentlemen, the groups for Stage 3 have been announced today. Wow, just looking at them. Where do we even begin? Where do we start to break this down? Who put who in what group? And do you guys think that these groups, my first glance is they're a little more balanced than last time, but just wanted to hear your thoughts. Kingdom, I'll let you rock first.
Um, I'm. I think they are probably the most balanced we've seen yet. Seeing Atlanta and Chicago together, and then with Toronto recently winning, placing them in the same group as Dallas and Minnesota, with a Florida team that's experienced a change, a Paris team that's experienced a change, and a lag team that lagging behind and needs to get some wins in that group. And then Group B, you've got a Seattle team that for no pun intended, wants to go on a surge. They need it in points. And the LA Thieves, like kind of new roster that, won 3 in a row in the losers bracket and got out of the tournament like most teams did by beat by Toronto. So I think they're going to be really competitive groups. And I'm kind of excited to see how things go with the new rosters and everything.
Yeah, I honestly get so excited when the group draw show comes out because you have representatives from each team kind of selecting who their team wants to put in the opposite group of them. So, Icon, if you can give I know you just did before we hit record, but please again give a rundown of who chose who and how did we kind of snake through this thing.
Yeah, so as we take a look at the two groups overall, the teams that are in the grand finals are automatically slotted into whoever wins is in Group A, the top of Group A, and whoever loses is in the top of Group B. So that puts us at Toronto as the first team in Group A, and then Atlanta the first team into Group B. And from there, the team that won gets the first pick for who goes over to Group B. So as we look at this, Toronto first put Chicago over in Atlanta's group, which put Atlanta and Chicago into Group B. After that, Atlanta selected Dallas. So now you have Toronto and Dallas. And then the next team that was picked by Chicago, and that put Minnesota over into Group A. And then it just kind of snakes back and forth. So Dallas picked LA Thieves, and then Minnesota picked New York, and then LA Thieves picked Florida, and so on and so forth as it goes down the line. It just kind of makes like a crisscross all the way down after you get those first two teams in there. But just kind of in terms of general overview, I kind of look at Group A from Minnesota's perspective, and I look at Group B from Chicago's perspective, just trying to break everything down and compare it to where we were at before. So when I look at Group A and I kind of focus in on where Minnesota's at, I actually think that this is very similar to the setup that they had to play through in Group B for Stage 2. So if I'm looking at Minnesota, I see that there are the two teams that are at least picked above them. I don't think that they're better than them, but if you're Minnesota and you're trying to get into the winner's bracket, you have to try to get a win over Toronto or Dallas. Just like in the last stage, it was Dallas and Chicago, which was above them. So you wanted to try to steal a game, off of one of those two teams that were picked first. And then directly underneath them are Florida and Paris. It's literally the same two teams that they played in the first week of Stage 2, and then LAG's at the bottom, and I think a lot of people would compare LAG to Seattle. So if I'm looking just as a broad stance going into the third stage, if I'm Minnesota, you want to get wins over teams like Florida, Paris, and LAG, and if you can beat one of those more difficult opponents in Toronto or Dallas, that's your path to 4-1. That was exactly kind of the approach that we took at the beginning of Stage 2, but they came out, and of course, we all know the story of Stage 2, losing those first two matches, going 0-6 map count to Florida and Paris. I don't expect that to be anywhere close to what happens in this stage, but it's interesting to just kind of look up and see how how closely Group A resembles Group B from the second stage. And then if I'm Chicago and I'm sitting over in Group B, obviously you have a super tough matchup there against Atlanta. And then as you look throughout, you don't really know what to expect from LA Thieves. They looked really good, as Kingdom mentioned earlier, towards the latter stages of the Stage 2 major. And then you look at New York, and they have a roster change. And then Seattle's coming on kind of strong. So Atlanta's obviously going to be a really tough matchup. And then LA Thieves and New York and Seattle, those are all teams that could challenge them. So as I looked at the groups, those are kind of the two paths that I've focused on. And that's just kind of the results that I came through as I looked through them.
Yeah, these are absolutely like no. I mean, it's. I feel like we say this every single stage. Like the groups are crazy, but it's just because the teams keep like almost outperforming themselves in a way, or one team will go down, and another one kind of rises up. I mean, nobody really expected Toronto to win the Stage 2 majors there, but then there they were. They won a best of 9 versus Atlanta phase. Absolutely wild. So to see how the groups have shaked out from here, like, I do agree. Our group is pretty similar. We got, usual suspects. We got Dallas, Florida, Paris, but now we'll get some new looks versus Toronto and LAG, which will be pretty exciting. Kingdom, I'd love to get your input. Obviously some roster movement going on this week. Looking at these new groups here, which team, who'd made a change, do you think is going to prove tougher than we think?
I think New York. I don't know what happened there. I don't know how they, I want to say, like, fell out of love with each other. I don't know how they went from being so dominant, so consistent. There's only like 3 teams in this league that I felt like were consistently performing at the exact same level all the time. Like, they didn't have really horrible losses throughout the season. They just stayed consistent, and that was FaZe, Dallas, and New York. And New York was playing teams close even when they were losing. They're pulling off reverse sweeps. And they just looked so different at the major. I mean, going 0-6, and they were the only team that Toronto didn't beat that was in the top 6. And so I was very shocked by what we saw. I think they're going to have the biggest turnaround because it'll maybe rejuvenate Clay. I know he was going through some personal stuff, and I feel like New York, and this is why I think Chicago has the most to lose here in this next stage. They have not played on a Sunday yet, and I think who's going to be standing in their way for where they place in the top of their group is going to be that New York team. I don't see them. They could probably maybe steal a win off of Atlanta because they look human now, but I think Chicago has a lot to lose, and I think New York is going to be the biggest change. I don't think what happened in Florida or Paris is going to produce like some type of a crazy, ridiculous run. They might go through a little honeymoon, kind of like LAT did, but I don't see in the long run them like winning a major or anything like that or placing top 4. But I do think that New York could get a chance to get back into that form they were at before.
Definitely looking at this with some ROKKR bias and just looking at the groups. I mean, like I said, all the teams are so dang competitive. You have, everyone stepping up to the plate at different instances. But if I had to choose a group that I would want ROKKR in, I think I like Group A. I don't know. I better knock on wood and not jinx anything. IKON, what do you think from ROKKR's perspective? Are they where they want to be? Like, is this, you'll take this, I guess, from the group selection show today?
Yeah, absolutely. 1,000%. I think they've already shown on multiple occasions that they can beat one of those 2 teams that's above them in Dallas. And if we're being perfectly honest, that first matchup on Championship Sunday for Stage 2, they had many chances to beat Toronto. And I really think if Minnesota would have beat Toronto in that matchup, it would have propelled them to a victory over Dallas. And then once you're in that grand finals against Atlanta, who knows what happens. But if I look at the teams in Group A, obviously Atlanta and Chicago, that kind of speaks for themselves. I thought Chicago got better as Stage 2 went on, and especially the Stage 2 major. But LA Thieves is one of those teams that there were people in power rankings before this major that had LA Thieves at like 11 or 12 on their power rankings because the org was just kind of all over the place. And then now they brought in Draza, and Kenny's been frying, and they just seem to be hitting their stride. And that's not a team that I would want to be playing right now heading into stage 3. And then New York with Clay and the moves that I mean, that's a team that could easily, surprise some people as they've been doing for the last month or so. And then you're looking at Seattle, and it seems like every time we watch Seattle play, they would put a graphic up on screen of this is how Pristini played in stage 1, this is how he played in stage 2, and the numbers were just so much better. And the same goes for Octane, and the same goes for Gunless. It just seems like that's another team that's slowly but surely finding their stride. So when I look at the rest of Group A, I look at Florida, who just made a roster change, and I look at Paris, who just made a roster change, and LAG didn't really look great in the Stage 2 major. So if I'm Minnesota, I probably want to try to avoid a lot of those teams that are over in Group B, and I'm feeling pretty happy about where I'm sitting currently over in Group A.
Well, it's getting to be a wild year, guys. We are 2 stages deep into the CDL 2021 season, and now we know our groups for Stage 3. I'm so excited to watch the action unfold, and just hopefully we place top 3 in the group, get in that winner's bracket, and you never know what can happen at the Stage 3 major. Thank you, IKON and Kingdom, for stopping in with me today, talking the groups, and we'll see you guys next week for the podcast.